Okay, so now it just executed on iOS, and here's how it looks on iOS. So basically, you can see we need to load those images. So the loading is there, images are being loaded. But other than that, everything is pretty much pretty nice on how we wanted to implement.
Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is going to be the next part of our travel app series, and in this video we are going to implement the listing. So in the previous video we implemented the authentication, and this video is going to be slightly different, where we'll be working more with the UIs and less with the backend. So without wasting any time, I'll straight away jump to the code. But before, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe and like the video. Now, let's just get started. So basically, this is the screen that we plan to do, or we plan to design today. Along with, we will also be showing this list or the card that we have. So basically, that's pretty much we have in the plates today. So I'll start with a very basic, showing this specific section on the top and along with this notification bell, and then we'll jump into this. This might be slightly difficult or like a bit complex because we'll be doing something really exciting over here. The next thing would be to basically list down these things, and we'll do that later on. So first thing first, let's just do the simple stuff first and start designing these two sections. So I'm gonna pull my Android Studio, and over here you see we have all these things. We last implemented the sign in and sign up set flows. Now inside this UI section, in the, I remember, compose main app, in the UI section I'm going to create a new package, and let's call this listing. Okay, now this is going to be that, and then we'll also create a Kotlin class. Now let's call that listing as um, home listing screen. Screen. Okay, this is going to be file, like I said, and then what we'll do is that we'll make a composable out of it, and then we'll create home listing like this. Okay, now along with that, I'll also create a composable with preview, and we'll also show background for that. This is going to be something like this. And once we do that, switch to the view side as well. And now we have this. Okay. So the first thing first, like we did previously as well, we'll be creating a scaffold, and that scaffold is supposed to show us basically a whole screen, right? Let me just resize it a little bit. Right now it's quite big. Okay, so now we have the scaffold in place, and let me just pull the code design first. So now over here you see there is basically some sort of mechanism where we have a top layer that is kind of a raw, then we have a text view, then we have again another raw, and then we have this list that basically have different items and all. So how do we do that? Like there are two different ways to do it. One is basically to create a column and draw these items and make them scrollable. Second is to create lazy column and add those, implement those. I'm gonna use the column first. So basically we'll create a column and then add these sections later on. So so basically over here, the first thing we need is the column, and you remember we need to add padding to that. The reason for that padding is that we need to leave the extra space from the top and bottom. Now inside that, the first section is that we should have a raw, and let's just say modifier dot fill max width. Okay, and inside that we have three sections. Okay, let me just download this file first. Okay, so now I have basically have exported them, and now we need to import those. So we'll go over here and go new. Okay, there's just one thing I believe we can do it here over here. So let me just do that and call it a vector asset. And from there, we'll just import that SVG file. Okay, so now from over here, we'll go to the documents, and from documents, you'll see that we have this. We'll just import that. Okay, let's see if it gets imported. Okay, so that is the one image. Then we go over here and then we import another vector asset, and this time it's going to be the notification one. Import that and finish. So now we have these two, the notification and import, and now we'll just take them and place it over here inside the compose resources rather than that, since we'll be using them over here. Okay, so now that is that. Now the first thing first, we need an image. Okay, and we'll be gonna say painter resource res dot drawable dot user. Okay, and then the content description is going to be null. I believe we need to build that first, so we'll just first build that. And how do we do that? I believe just try to run it. Once we build that, we should be able to see that user. Now we can see I can import that user over here. And okay, so now we need to rebuild this. And once we build that, you will see that we got that image icon on there. And along with that, you remember we need text as well. So I'm going to create one more row, and we'll get that inside it like this. Okay, and along with that we'll also create a text. For now, let's use Leonardo as name. We'll change that, don't worry. And also make sure that is also going to be alignment dot center vertically, so that it's centered. And what else? You can add some padding as well. Modifier dot padding horizontal, and make it perhaps 16 dot dp to make it a bit distant, or perhaps not. If not 16, maybe 8 should be more enough. Okay, so now we have this, but we need to round this as well. So let's just round that. And to basically round that, we need modifier. Okay, so for that we'll just use modifier dot clip. Okay, and now I'm gonna say round corner shape. Okay, and round corner shape, perhaps we can say 32.dp. So you say that, and then we also add some background to that. So I'm gonna say background, and now this time is going to be light gray. Even we can also copy that and go for alpha 0.2f, perhaps something like this. If not 2f, 3f should be enough, right? Now there's just one thing I believe we should also do, and that is going to be a padding. A little bit of padding we should add. So I'm going to add padding 4.dp, so that it leaves some space from top, right, and left. And this is that. 2 should be enough. Okay, now we have this thing in place, right? And the next thing would be to draw the notification. So again, this is going to be a simple image painter resource res dot drawable dot notification. Content description is null. Okay, and for this is again going to be like this. No, we don't need this. Instead, what we need is, I'm going to say modifier dot size, and that is going to be 48 dps. That's one thing. Then we need padding, and that is should be at least 8, if not 8, at least 12 dot dps, so that the image icon is still smaller. And also, before that, I guess we can add a shape to this. No, okay, so we don't need, we can't add shape over here. I'm gonna use clip, and I'm gonna say circle shape. This is that, and we also add a background to this, and the background should be similar to what we added over there. Okay, now the problem here is that the notification is there, and the bar is there, the name is there, but we need to basically distribute them, so one goes to the end, the other one goes to the start. So for that you can just create another a simple spacer inside that and say modifier dot weight 1f. So once you do that, this is will basically be added something like this, and now to the top level raw we'll just add a 16 dp padding so that it just leaves some spaces. If not 16, perhaps we can make 12, something like this. Okay, so now looking at the design, okay, it should be 16. So looking at the design, we have this and this, and let me just switch it to 16 back, so it is something like this. Now the next thing would be to draw this text view which says explore the beautiful world, and it has something like different, where the explore that is different, beautiful is different, and world is different. And what I'm going to do is that I'm not going to hard code all these things, because let's say in the later stages we have translations and we want to change how would that work, right? Same goes if you want to have a different phrases, like multiple and different kind of phrases, how would that be managed? So we'll basically make it customizable, where we can define where or which word should be highlighted with which color, if it should have a um, this underline in the bottom or not, and all that. So this is going to be something like that. So now we'll work on something like this. Okay, so the next thing is to implement the highlighted text field. You can see over here we have a little bit of restructuring or styling, where the first couple of texts are not highlighted, and then the next two are highlighted, but with like again different kind of design and implementation. So so what we need to do is that we need to make it configurable, like I discussed. We want to make sure that, let's say if you want to change the explore, or like want some underline text for the explore, you can do that. If you want something else, you can do that, and all that. So okay, so first thing first, we'll basically create a widget. So let's just go to the widget section where we have all these widgets, create a new file and call it multi highlight highlights text. Okay, that is going to be a file, and now this is going to be a oh sorry, not multi, excuse me, composable. And now over here I'm gonna say, okay, and now over here we'll say function multi multi highlighted text. Okay, and now over here what we need is basically we need a string, which a full text string, which is going to be here. Then we need highlights, and this highlights is mean supposed to be the text highlight. So basically this is going to be a simple data class. Let's just create a test data class and call that text highlight. Okay, now over here it requires a couple of things. First of all, it needs a string. Second thing is it needs a color, the kind of color it should be showing. Third one is going to be the underline. If you want to show the underline, for that let's just set to true. Fourth one could be if it's bold as well, so like is bold is equals to false. So let's say like we have these kind of things, and now along with that we need this, we need the list of title, we need the default text style that we have, and we also need the default font size that we are going to use for this. Okay, along with that you can say font color. Okay, and this is going to be the normal font color, and also rather than using this, I'm going to change it to something as font weight. Okay, and by default it's going to be font weight dot normal, and we can change it depending on how we need it, like what we need for that. Okay, so we have a full text, we have highlights, we have a text style for default, we have the font size, default font size. Since this is going to be a little bit higher, so I'm going to keep it 28 for this. And font color, again, it's going to be a simple color. Perhaps we can use something like this. Also, perhaps we can also do one more thing, and that is going to be the modifier as well, which is important when in order to create any sort of composable. Now, the first thing first is that we need to get the starting and ending position of the of this. Uh, okay, I'll just do one more thing. I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna say preview, show background, and that is going to be something like this. I'm gonna use the same text we have in the design, which says explore the beautiful world. So let's just use the same just for the testing. So I'm gonna say explore the beautiful world. Okay, and the world is supposed to be the that. I'm also gonna use a bit different color. Perhaps we can use green for now. The shadow, and this is going to be bold. Fine. We also make sure to make the other one the beautiful as well. So we'll change that to beautiful, and this is going to be the color should be black. We don't need that. We just need it to be, you know, black. Okay, so now we have this. So basically, this is just a preview section that we have. Right now, it might not work. We might not see anything, but how we are going to implement it. The first thing that we need to do is that we need to get the starting and ending point of these highlight text. So basically, the position in the string is important to identify, right? So, so I'm going to create a class. You can say data class, and I'm going to say highlight highlight position. Okay, and it should contain a couple of things. For example, it should contain start index as an integer. It should contain end index. I'm going to say wall end index. Then we should define the color for the highlight and also the position of that. Or perhaps you can say something like this. So so we have the start index, end index, and the highlight in itself for that position. Now the next thing would be to basically get the highlighted index or highlighted text for that. So I'm going to say wall highlighted positions. Okay, and it's not going to be the mutable. Remember, okay, and something like this. So basically, depending, the first key is going to be this. This is just like to avoid the recomposition and make sure it's like for performance relevant. So what we are going to do is that we are going to do it by the highlights, the list of highlights along with the full text, so that like if either of stuff changes, we'll just reprocess this, else it will not be doing that. Let's just get rid of all that and we'll do it manually. Okay, so it is just highlight position, just to calculate the highlighted positions and all for this. So over here you can say highlights dot map not null. Okay, now inside that I'm going to say wall start is equals to full text index of it dot word, which means that it will give us the starting point from where the word is getting started. Okay, now over here I'm going to say if start is not equals to -1, this means there is a very valid, the word is valid and it's available in the full text. Now over here you will define that position for yourself. Okay, where you have the start index, then you have the end index, which is going to be start plus the length of the whole word. Like let's say in our case we have the start over here, and then the length is basically part of it, so it will be the length of the word that will be going along with that. Okay, and else in else part it's going to be just null. Now once you do that, now last thing that we did over here is basically we say sort by it dot start index, which means this is just to sort the item based on the indexes. So like the word that comes initial should be sorted properly. So what we did over here, we just identified the starting position. Like what we did is that we found that word and then we calculated the start index and the end index of that word based on that, along with the highlights. Okay, that's one thing. Now the next thing would be to create that annotated string where you can, define your whole style. So I'm going to say wall annotated string is equals to build annotated string. Now we get the builder. Okay. And now based on that, what we are going to do is that we are going to say wall current index is equals to 0. This is going to be like the very starting point of that, and which means that um, starting from the very basic, like from over here at this point, right? So now we are at the index 0. Now from over here, what we'll do is that we'll start annotating or like adding the style for the text, for the highlights and all. Okay, so how do we do that? So for that, I'm going to say highlighted position dot for each. Okay, now this is going to be, as I said, one by one, and we have sorted it, so which means that basically we will get the first, like the closest index initially. So now over here I'm going to say if current index is less than it dot start index, which means like if there is any text that is available before the starting of the highlighted text, of the current highlighted text, we need to color that with, with black or whatever. Okay, so now what we do is that we'll basically be implementing this is going to say with style. We are going to implement that style onto that, and that is going to be span style. And this span style is supposed to contain some sort of stuff like the font color, which is going to be very normal. Then we have the font size, which we've already defined, and then the font weight, which is going to be normal. Okay. Now over here, what we are going to do is that I'm going to append that text, which says the star substring from the current index, which is going to be 0, and then it goes to the start index of that. Okay, that's one thing. Now the next step would be the highlight. Now we know that this is going to be the index. The start index is basically the part, like the start of the highlighted index. So again, we're going to use with style, and then you're going to say span style. This time, what we're going to do is that we are going to use the highlight and the color from there. The font size is going to be the default, and then the font weight should also come from the highlight. And the text decoration, no, I don't think so. We need that. We don't need the default underline for this. Just avoid that. Okay. Now, once you do that, you need to change that current index is equals to it dot end index, which means that till this point, the current index is basically created, and this is going to be war. So once you do that, this means that the current index is now basically at the end of the first highlighted text. Now, the next thing is that we need to define the rest of the style as normal as well. So again, with style, span style, default font color, default font size, default stuff. And then for that, we'll just use that. If the current text is less than full length, we just take the rest of the text and add the default colors to that. Okay, now let me just create a box over here. Inside box, let's create a simple text and define annotated string over there. Now over here we have that. Let me see. So now you can see the beautiful is also in like bold, and the world is also, defined according to that. Now let me just change that from green to something much more. Also, let's add that so that it can be set according to that. Let's just use till this point. We have pretty much how we wanted this. We definitely need some more stuff over here in order, uh, to have that border in the bottom. But for now, till this point, I think the rest, like the till this point, that we have how we can highlight the text. Right now we need to implement how we need to draw the um, underlines. Like if you have a very normal underline, like if you want to implement a default underline, what you can do is that you can just default use that approach of text decoration like this. It will add that underline, but this is not we want. Like if you look into the design, you want a very customized kind of underline, which basically start from there and end, and it's kind of a curve, which is not achievable by the default component. So we need to do some sort of customization for that. And to do that, what we're gonna do is that we're gonna take the space, like again, like calculate the positioning from the start to the end, and based on that we'll create some sort of curves through canvas and use them accordingly. Okay, so to do that, the first thing we need is we need a state for text measures. So I'm going to say text measures. Text measure is basically a help, a component that basically help us measuring the text. So it's just a default text measure that we are going to use. The next thing would be to create the wall text layout results is equals to remember. Again, we need to keep a track of it. So I'm going to use remember, and then I'm going to say text measurer dot measure, and then for that I'm going to use the annotated string for that. Okay, this is wrong. We need to place it over here where I can access the annotated string. So I'm going to use the annotated string for that, and for style we will define the text style that we have. So basically we have this text layout result, and this will help us calculate the the position of um, the position of the word, like the starting word and the ending word, and we'll basically calculate the rest of the spacing, and based on that we'll calculate, we'll draw the underlines accordingly. Okay, now we need some underline data. So for underline data you can say wall underline data is equals to remember, and you define, again, the important thing to see over here is that I'm adding these keys, this text layout results and highlighted. These keys are basically the supposed to help us with values, so that we can, it's easier to like it's performance efficient and all that. You can do it without the keys, but then it will recompose a lot, and the processing will it will be a very performance hazard. Okay, so just to avoid that. Okay, so now we have this thing, and now inside that we need to calculate the highlighted text, the underlined data for the highlighted text. So again, I'm going to say highlighted positions dot filter. Okay, and now this is going to be it dot. This is going to be it dot highlight dot underline, which means that only those that were basically be have the underline value true will be doing that. And then I'm going to say map not null. There you go. Position. Okay, something like this. Now again, it's just similar to how we calculated the values for the highlighted text. This time it's slightly different, because this time we are fetching, like, not by string, but instead of how big the font, how big the characters are basically drawn, based on that we'll be calculating it. Okay, so to do that, let's just add a try catch to this. Catch exception. Okay, that's that, and we'll also set null. Now inside that we need the starting and ending. Like I mentioned, with text measure, what we need is that you need the starting position, starting character, and then the ending character, and based on that we'll calculate all these values. Okay, so for that I'm going to say wall start box is equals to, again, the pay position for the starting. For this is again the position coming for the highlight. Okay, and then for ending we'll be using this, where basically be the ending index -1. And then what we are going to do is that I'm going to create a pair. I'm going to create a pair. The pair should contain a rectangle, so that is going to be a rectangle, and that rectangle should be imported accordingly. Okay, rectangle, and that rectangle should contain the the starting and ending and all that. So basically what it does is that the left part is the starting point, so we go to the left of the start. Top is going to be the start box to the top bottom, and then for right we go to the right, and then bottom is going to be start bottom. I believe we don't need the 2f thing. And also, since it's a pair, we should also define the color for that as well. So once we do that, you now see that we have a rectangle that has some some information based on the size and starting point and ending point. It's just this rectangle. Okay, to make it like easier to understand, it's just create this rectangle with the start and ending measurements and all, and we also keep that value as pair. Okay, now that's done. Once that is done, we'll be using this box like we have done for the annotated string. Now based on that, we'll also be using it for drawing the items on top of it. Okay, so this just one thing we can do. I'm gonna use text style is equals to text style just for easier. This is going to be style is equals to text style. Okay, so it uses that style. And now the next thing, since this style is important, because based on this style the rectangle will be calculated, and if you have a different style that you pass over here and different style that you use for the text layout result, things will be difficult to measure. Okay, so this is important to make sure to use a proper styling or same styling. Okay, now the text, the next thing is, I said, like I said, we'll be using canvas. So that is a canvas that we draw. For that, I'm going to use modifier is equals to modifier dot match parent size. Okay, so that it uses the parent size. Oh, what happened? Okay, we need to import canvas so that it uses it that way. Now the next thing is that we need to draw the underline. So I'm going to use underline data dot for each, and again you can define some keys for that. You can define the keys as, now over here inside that you have multiple things. For example, this underline data is a pair, so you can say bounding box is one and the color is the second one, right? You're not going to draw the line over here. Instead, what we did is that we know that the underline data is a pair, so we got a bounding box and a color from there. Now over here, from over here, will basically be drawing a path, will creating a path that we will draw on the canvas. Okay, so for that, first thing that we need to do is that we need to make sure the bounding box is not equals to rect dot 0. Okay, which means if the size is 0, we don't want to draw it anything. We don't want to draw any of the stuff if the size of the box is 0, which means that if it can be an empty space which is not correct. Second thing is that we need to basically identify some starting points for that. So I'm going to say wall base y. This base y is basically going to be the bounding box dot bottom. Okay, and rather than 2f, instead I'm going to use 6.dp 6.dp to px. So what we did is basically we know the base y, like it's basically the bottom, and then after that we are having a little bit of more spacing, like we adding 6 dp to the bottom as well, so that the underline that we draw, it's like being drawn a bit down rather than it's been drawn on top of it. And I'll show you. So for example, for now let's just keep it 6 and we'll later on change that. Second thing we need, we have a base y, we should have a start x as well. So I'm gonna say wall start x. Start x is again the starting point, so this is just the bounding box, the left of the bounding box, and then we have an end x, which is the right of the bounding box, and then there are some configuration values, some basically the value of how bigger the underline should be. So I'm gonna say wall peak height is equals to, let's say I want to have the value to be the height of the value should be maybe 7.dp.2px. That's one thing. And then last thing should be wall thickness, and for that I'm going to use 10.dp.2px. Okay, so now basically these are some values that you can change, like the spacing you want, the bottom, so like you want the underline to be nearby the text, you can change that value and adjust it accordingly. The peak height, thickness, depending on how it looks, you can always change that. Okay, it's not something that it's just hard and fast. You can definitely change these things. Now Then the next thing is that we need to draw the path. So basically, we need a path that we will draw on a canvas based on how the text view is. Okay. So I'm going to say wall path is equals to path. Okay, that is the canvas. This is the path we are going to use, and then I'm going to say something as apply. Okay. Now move to start x and start base y, sorry, and base y. Important. This is very important. Basically, this means that the path should start from the left start of the point, and the start x, this is the start x, and base y is basically the bottom section. So basically, we are starting something, starting to draw something from this point, and we'll draw it like this, like a curve till the end of this. So basically, that's the target to achieve over here. Okay. Now, the next thing would be inside that is basically to create a top curve. So basically what we are going to do again is that we'll start one point from here, and then we'll basically draw one curve from the top, and then there will be one more smaller curve that will be in the bottom. So there will be a top curve and then a bottom curve, and then we'll fill that inside of that curve so that we can get a curve kind of thing. Because if you look into the design, we have also something like this. We have a starting curve on top and bottom curve, and then inside of that is filled. So that is how basically we are going to achieve this. Now we have the starting curve. So basically, to draw the start curve, what we need to do is I'm going to say quadratic 2. Now this is important. This is going to be the x1 is equals to start x plus end x. This is going to be the starting point and the ending point divided by 2, which means this is going to be the midpoint of that. Then we have base point y1, which is base minus. So basically the base is the bottom, and the peak height is having that item. So basically, again, this is slightly different. Like, it might be slightly confusing for you, but remember, adding something, removing something from the peak height will basically increase the height of it. So let's say we are at this point, and if we remove that, adds that 7 dp, this means that the section will be somewhere over here. If you add something to the base, while let's say you have a base, and then like over here we added this plus, which means that it went from top to bottom. So removing will always go back. This is something that you need to understand over here. X1 is basically the point where the start and end x. So basically the bounding box, this and that, and then half of it. So we need to go to that center point, right? And then we need, like, the curve should be this point. The so basically so basically what we want to do is that we have a starting point like this, we have an ending point like this, and we want to draw a curve. So we need to define a height or a center point through which the curve should basically be curved. Okay, and that's what we are doing over here. The x1 is going to be start x plus end x plus 2, which means that the center of this, like the half of it, right? Then we have a base y1, which is the base y minus peak height, which means that the base y is this, but the height should be somewhat over here like this. So which means this will be at this point, so this to this point, and then the curve should be drawn accordingly, right? So that's what we did. Then we have x2, which is again that, and then the base y2 is again the base y. So basically, looking at this, what happens, that your x1 is this point. So the starting point over here, you remember the starting point was this. So we started from here, and then we went to the center of this through this x1, and base y was again like reduced. So the x1, then the center, the move point is basically over here, which is the base y minus peak height along with this. So x1 y1 draw or get placed somewhat over here, and then the end x and base y again goes down to this point. So basically we have starting point at this, center point at this, and then the bottom section goes over here. And you can see once we draw it, okay, because right now it might be a little bit of confusing for you, but you'll understand that. And to basically make it understandable for you, what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw that path for you. So I'm going to use draw path like this, and now you see we have something like this. Okay, just remove that. and the style should not be and it should be fill. Okay, now you see we have something like this, which looks like this, and the start point, and then we have a little bit of height, and then the bottom, and this is how we have created it. Now let's say I like I mentioned, the starting point is this, or center point is this. Now let's say I change it to to something like this. If I change it, you will see the draw goes to the end of it, and there's like no way to understand that. And let's say if I divide it by 3, the position changes. So basically the by 2 means that it's going to be the start point and end point, and divided by 2. Now there's just one more thing that we are doing, and that is going to be the thickness, and we also need to basically remove that thickness, like add that thickness as well into this, which is the 10 dp from there. So now we have something like this. The curve is there, but it's not looking as we were expecting this, right? We want the edges to go there, and then based on that it should look something like this. Now let me just change these values. Let me just add make it 10, and make this 6 or something like this. Now this makes it more easier, and like I said, if I remove that thing, you will see that the position goes to the top. So depending on the need, you can define all these values of how you want it. Either you want a 6 or you want a 7 or whatever. Okay, I'm gonna use it this way, and now we have these things. Now the next thing is that we need to draw the bottom edge. So for that, again, I'm gonna use quadratic 2. This time, what we are gonna do is that I'm gonna go to the bottom thickness of that. Again, we need the starting point to be the center of this. Base wise, slightly different. Previously, what we did, we added the peak height to the height, and then also added the thickness. This time I'm going to remove that thickness from there because we want a little bit of smaller section for that, and then we also need half of it, which is like this. Then again, start x and base x is there, and this way you have something like this, which looks something like this. Right now, this is how we wanted it. The design is slightly awkward. We need this to be false, and let's just use that for this. Use black for this. Come on. That is going to be magenta. That is going to be black, which is fine. This is going to be true. This is going to be false. And there is just one problem. I believe I have caused one problem with the appending of the text over here. Now we have two worlds. I should be one world. And I believe that should be where we are creating the highlighted text like this over here. Now over here, if you look into that, we have the current index less than full text length. Okay, so what am I missing here? Okay. Sorry. I think I know what happened. So basically, once all the highlights are done, we need to append it then, not before that. So basically, that's why that was the mistake I was making. What I was doing is that I was actually adding it inside the highlighted position section, which will basically appending it multiple time, the world, and that's why basically we were having two different things. Now basically, over here you can see the world, the the bottom spacing is a bit higher, so we need to reduce that. And to do that, what we can do is that we can remove it like this. So if you do that, it will be something like this. Perhaps you can say it's a little bit smaller section you can add to this, like this. Come on, I like this. Okay, now right now it's looking like this, but if you use scaffold, let's say if you use a scaffold, you can see now it looks like this, and this is how basically we wanted. You can definitely define a different color for this, but the core understanding of all this is something like that. Okay. And now let's say if I want backslash n for this, that's how we wanted, or that's what we wanted in our designs, right? And you can also update the font size for this depending, so that it basically fill up for that, something like this, right? Cool, right? And one more thing we can do over here, and that is going to be the modifier should go is equals to like this, perhaps fill max width, right? And modifier dot fill max width. So something like that. And now we have the highlighted text view. And what we can do is that we can use that inside the home listing screen that we have. So we have that column section over here. Now over here you can say high multiple high multi-highlighted text like this. I'm going to say modifier dot fill max width. That's one thing. And then along with that you need the text that you want. Then you need a highlight text like this. Okay, we already have that over here, so I'm gonna use the same functionality for this. So let's just avoid that. That's what we wanted, right? And add it to the column so that it draws over here. Now like I said, you can add some padding horizontal, and that is going to be the perhaps 16, at least 16 should be there, 16.dp, right? And also you can change the font size. So the font size is over here like this. Perhaps you can use 44 sp there so that it looks bigger, and that's how you can get what you want. So perhaps so So I think that's that. I believe we should also be able to change that size like this, values for these peak height and thickness. We should do that. It should be we should be able to do it from here. So you can say thickness like this, and that also should be the peak height. Should be like this. Now change that values from here to peak height, and this is going to be thickness for that. My system is super slow right now. I'm not sure what's happening here, but yeah. Okay, now we go over here. It is going to be dp. Use the dps, use it over here as well. And 2px. Now it's look like this, and if you go over here you will see you have something. Okay, rendering issue, let's fix that. Now over here you can define, like, the reason I did all that is basically you want to change the peak height to 0.dp. You can change that, so it looks like that. Perhaps 10.dp. If it's not enough, maybe you can add 14, so it's add more. And also for thickness, you can say you want a little bit of more thickness into that. You want to add something like that. You can configure it from here as well. Okay, so now that is what we have. We should change the color, which is important. So let's just go to the theme side and change the color for this. Okay, that is my material theme. Now over here we'll create package. Now call it theme. Okay, and inside that create a Kotlin class. Call it color.kt. It's going to be kt, and now over here you can just define the color like this. Okay, and for that you can get over here to the color, and over here we have that color. Copy that color from here and place it with this. Now use that color over here. Once you do that, you have your design ready for for this. Okay, so the next thing is that we will be implementing the best destinations view all, and then we have cards to draw. So let's just implement that. Okay, again, we will be inside that column. Okay, and now over here we will be creating a raw. That raw is just having a text that says best destinations and nothing else. And then we will be having a spacer that is again for one weight, and lastly we will be using a text button that says see all, on click, come on click as to do raw. Okay, sorry, that's definitely how we want something like this. Okay, modifier dot fill max width. Then we will be using vertical alignment dot center vertically, and like this. Okay, something like this. Perfect. Let's run this once again. Now you see we have the best destination section. We definitely don't need that. Instead, we need Travnor spacer, Travnor, Travnor spacer, perhaps 16.dp. So have that spacing, and also we'll be adding padding 16.dps for that. That should we should not use this, instead just use that. That text size, font size should be bold and slightly bigger. 20 is much, perhaps 18 should be fine, and maybe we can make it medium so that it looks much better, a bit better. Not yes, I think that's good. Okay, so now that we have the destination, we have the see all section. The next step would be to draw the I just need that to draw the horizontal view with the data, right? So just do that. So to do that, we will be using horizontally. So I'm gonna say lazy raw for that, and that lazy raw is supposed to draw some items. Right now we don't have any item, or we don't have any stuff, so we need to either we can fetch it from the server, or we can use some dummy data for that. Right now something like this, destination card. This destination card will get over here. I'm gonna use composable function destination card, and something like that. You can see it looks like this. So that's basically something we will be doing along with the rest of the information that we need. For example, the image will go somewhere, and then along with that we'll have some text. So if you look into the design, this is basically the stuff we have a rounded corner card which have a rounded corner image inside that, and in the bottom we have a couple of things. For example, we have the name, ratings, and the location. I'm not going to use the user recommendations or user liking stuff, so I'm going to just delete that. But the rest of the design should be intact, and we should be using that. So let's just implement some sort of dummy information for that. Right now I'm just going to use this image, uh, just for the sake of getting the view to see how it looks, and then we'll later on implement the backend and then fetch the information from the server. So I'm gonna use that and place that in the drawable for now. Just again, this is just for dummy purposes. And now we have something like this. We don't need that height and width for now. We know that we have an image and we need an image inside that. So I'm gonna say painter resource, painter resource, res dot drawable dot dummy, and for content description we're gonna say null. uh, okay, something like this. Let's just rebuild this to see the image. Perhaps we have the image now. You can see I have the image. The size is not good. We don't need 150. Instead, if you go over here and look at the size, it's perhaps somewhat around 240. So let's just use that, perhaps 240 dBs like this. And round corner shape, good. We don't need the color for this background, so let's just okay. And once you add that, let's add some more padding by the end of that as well. Padding 16.dps to that. Perfect. Vertical only. Okay, so what I did is basically I created those vertical spacing, and now in the bottom we need a spacer to add some spacing. Then we have some sort of destination title and all that. And what else do we have? We have a title, and on the other end we have the ratings, and then the bottom we have the location. And use color as gray, like this. Okay, and if we look into this, we need some spacing. So let's just add those spacing into this. Right now it's quite smaller in terms of spacing, so we need to add those. Horizontal spacing, it's a 16. We need 16 at least for that. Same goes for this. We need 16 for that. Internal spacing, maybe we make it more smaller, and then on the right side of this text, for this we can say raw modifier dot fill max width. Then we have something like this. On the other hand, we have this, and instead I'm going to use weight for this 1f. Okay, this is going to be 4.7, something like this. I believe cannot do that. Something like this should be more than enough. Okay. What happened here? Why we have a raw? Let me add a background to this. See, fill max width. Why it's not? Oh, interesting. What's just happened here? Image is there. This raw. We have this text. Okay, so now we have something like this. What we did is basically the image should be not like that. Let's just do something for the image. What do I miss over here? It's basically vertical arrangement. It's going to be arrangement dot center. Horizontal alignment is going to be alignment dot center horizontally, so things are pretty much center aligned. Then we have some spacing issue. Perhaps we can reduce that to 8. Okay, this is internal. Okay, I found that we have this vertical one, and internally change that to 50. And also make sure it's fill max width. Okay, now just remove that background color, just add it for testing. So let me just get rid of that. Now I think we should be good. The card are there, the card are placed. Now if I run this, you will see that it should be scrollable as well. And let me just run this. Okay, sorry, we need to change that as well. So we go to the app section, and instead of sign up, we make listing, or say home listing screen. Run this once again. This time when we run it, we should be able to see how it looks over here, and you can see that they are scrollable as well. Right now the image is one, and we don't have some we need to add some icons for the location over here, and also the star from over here. So once we do that, it will be look like much better than how it looks now. But yeah, you can see at least the design looks pretty much how we want it. Now the next thing we are gonna do is that we are gonna integrate the backend into it. So that is again interesting. We'll be integrating, we'll getting the all these information, these destination information and all from the server, and we'll see how that works. So stay tuned.
Okay, so basically the next step would be to integrate the server. Okay, and if you remember in the server side, we already had some listing like this travel listing DTO that we had, and we also had a travel listing mapper for this case, and like we implemented all the dummy stuff and all that. So basically, first of all, I need to get rid of all that so that we can implement the newer functionality for that. This was the screen that we were using, so I'm just gonna get rid of that screen first. And if we go to the data section, we have this dummy data source. This is not anymore needed, so we'll get rid of that. And once we do that, we'll have to fix over here is required. The listing repository is now basically should have a remote data source as stuff. and this should also be something as remote data source listing repository. For now we just have one functionality, so I'm gonna use suspend function and then this travel listing, and this should not be flow. That's also important to fix. And now we go over here, we get rid of all that. This should something become like this, some function, and also the flow, we'll get rid of that from here. This will be something we'll fix, we'll implement that, and we get rid of that functionality first. Okay, now this travel listing DTO is not similar or same as what we have in the backend, and same is going to be for this one. We need to fix these properly. Now the first thing that we need is basically we need to run the server. So basically you need to load that server code and run it, and once you run it you should see something like this. Okay, and once along with that, what you can do is get over here and search for API docs. If you search that, you get to this screen. From over here you can get over here to this get request, and you can just simply execute it. Once you execute it, you get this response. Okay, so now basically this response is something that we need. Okay, one way is basically to just copy that and get over here inside the this section and create the model for that. So in the data section, what I'll have to do is that in the model section I can just get over here, create a Kotlin class or data class from here, and then over here just pass this listing as. Okay, now let's call that as listing response. Okay, and we'll generate that. So once we generate that, it will create two files for me. One is the listing response and one is the listing, and now this listing should be travel listing. Okay, so something like that. Now we already have a travel listing in the code. So what I did is basically I created this as travel listing. Let me get rid of this DTO first. So this was the previous one, and now rename that file as well so that it's easier for me to read and write. Okay, and fix this as well. Now this needs to be serializable as well, so we make sure it's serializable, and this one as well. Now there's one problem that you may encounter. That is basically one thing is this any. Also there has been some values that needs to be updated. So to make sure that you have the correct travel listing DTO, you can go to the backend code, and from over here you have this file with the name of travel listing DTO, and from there you can just get this listing response. This will help you get the correct value or set the correct value. There could be some values that are nullable, there could be some values that are double, but over here when parsing from the JSON it becomes int. So once I do that, you should see that this gets something like that. Now the same thing we need to accordingly fix the domain model as well. This is my travel listing model over here. I need to update that, and now basically for the current need, I need a couple of things. I just need some information. The rest I don't need them. I might need them later on, but for now we don't need that. Okay, we need price, we need country, city, nothing. We need category, no. We need description, no. We just need the title, location, rating. These are the stuff that we need, and we can get rid of these values as well. Now this travel listing is something like that. So according to that, I need to fix my mappers. First, we are not going to convert it to DTOs, and the second thing is that we just need to pass the values that are required only. Okay, so images, that's going to be images only. We don't need price per night and rest of the stuff. So this is the only object that I'll need. Now we are good over here. So basically we have updated the response objects, and we have also updated the relevant files or relevant stuff that we needed. Now most of this implementation is already there, like you have this get all listing. There has been some changes that you need to fix, but other than that I think the rest of the stuff is there. First we need to get fixed, and that is basically this section. So now over here what we need to do is that we need to do something as get data source dot get all listing. This functionality is not there in the server side implementation or like the remote data section over here, so we need to implement that. Okay, so the first function is going to be get all listing, and that is going to be result, and that is going to be listing response, right? And for that, what you can do is that you can just create another endpoint, and that is going to be listing base URL. Now if you go over here, you can see there is a, this is basically the endpoint that you can use. So it's just simple listings, and let's just use that like this. Now we have the listing endpoint, and what we need to do is that we need to just simply call that request. This is a get request, remember that, and I believe the rest is fine. Okay, now over here you have this get listing section, and now over here you can say if detours dot is success case, in that case you return that, else do something like this. Okay, or let's just do something more, sorry, or let's just do one more thing. Rather than using this, let's use a result for that as well instead, and then we'll process that in the right. Now in the implementation section, we'll also make it a result. Okay, and we don't need this instead. So now over here, what you're gonna do is that if it's success, we need to get the listings. Listing is equals to dot listing, and then we convert that, and then we set that as successful case, and I think that should be fine. So now what we did is basically we got that, we mapped it into the domain models, and then we returned it properly. And now this is in the get listing use case. There might be a little bit of change. Instead of this, we can do something like that, and this should also be suspend function. Okay, now we got the data get listing, and now inside that, what you can do is that you can say if data dot is success, you return that, else you return exception or something like that, or maybe you can return an empty list here like this, right? And don't need that to be returned, right? Perfect. Okay, now the use case is ready, and now according to that we need to update the view model and UI state because there might be some changes there as well. Now over here you see previously it was just collecting it. Right now it's not collecting. Instead what it's gonna do is that it's gonna give me a result for that. So I'm gonna say not let. Okay, now once you do that, it should just give you that result, and based on that you will just process that. Now that's that. Okay, so the UI state should be similar and travel model is ready. Now we need to use this view model inside the listing screen that we created. This is the listing screen we created, and now let's just try to do that. So I'm going to say view model, travel view model is equals to coin view model. Okay, that's one thing. And then now the next thing would be wall UI state is equals to view model dot collect as state. We import that. So once that is done, now what we need is that we need a couple more things, like we have the highlighted text definitely before this best destination. After the best destination, this section depends on the value that we have dot value dot listings. So if the listings are there, okay, so what we did is basically if it's not empty, then we basically create that, else we need that, we get rid of that. Okay, in case of loading, so I'm going to say if loading, we use circular progress indicator for that, and in case of error, or you can say UI state dot value dot error message dot let, and for that you just create a text error basically showing you that this is basically an error section. Okay, now over here in the listing section, what you can do is that instead of passing an index, instead we'll be passing id of index. Okay, and we get rid of this by saying this is going to be travel listing. Okay, now we have this travel listing, and that should be model. Okay, and now destination instead should go model dot title. One thing for ratings, you can say model dot rating. For location, you can say model dot location. Definitely need that, get rid of that. What else we have left? We got the title, we got the spacing and all that. There's just a couple of adjustments that we might need, but first let's try to run it and see if this basically gets updated and we get the response. Okay, now you can see I got the response for round trip to Paris with 0 rating. Then we have Mountain View Hotel, that's causing some problem with this. Then we have Bali Experience, Resort, Safari Adventures and all that. So we need to fix these design issues that we have. The title should always be single line, which should not go more than one line, and the rest of this thing should also be properly managed. So we need to fix that. Okay, let's try that. Okay, and we should also have a padding by start that is going to be a.dp. Now let's try this once again. Okay, so I've basically added the weight to the title rating. Okay, sorry, we don't need the padding to be set proper full. Okay, now you see the elements are fixed, but we need to wrap the text even more. Like this title should not go to the two-liner because it's just kill the whole design problem. So we need to handle the overflows for that. So for overflow, you can say text overflows dot ellipsis, which means that it will just add 3 lines or 3 dots by end of that. What just happened? Okay, sorry, I need to make sure the max line is 1 as well. Sorry about that. Now when you run it, you see we have a pretty same design and all that, but now the address is also getting out of hand, so we need to fix that as well. Again, same for address as well. Now the thing is that we got that items over here, everything is there, but the image should be updated as well. We don't need this image, or we don't want that image to be this way. So basically, to integrate image section, so basically for that we need to implement coil kt, and this is basically the dependency. So we'll just get that and go over here to the build.gradle file, and now inside this common main section, this is data, sorry, not the data, over here inside the common main we integrate that coil and sync it. So hopefully once we sync that, it should work. Okay, so the coil is there, and now we go over here to the home listing section, and this image view that we have, this image right now, you can see that it's just an image. Now we can basically call an async image, and then from here you can say model, and you can define the URL for that. So for that you can say model dot images dot get first or null, else you can say painter resource res dot travel dot dummy. Okay. Okay, now I believe this should work. Try again. Let's just try once again. This time we should be able to get the image for the actual image for the listing that we have. But let's see. Okay, looks like something went wrong here with the coil. Coil seems to not been able to load the image. Okay, there must be something more. Perhaps we need to define the networking as well for that. So again, once again, you need to get over here in the app Gradle level file. Now over here, define this. This 3.3.0 and let's sync it. Hopefully once we do that, we should be able to load those images because it needs a network component for coil and we were not passing that. So let's hope this fixes our issue. Now let's just rerun this and I'm very hopeful this time the issue will get resolved. Like I said, the issue got resolved. We got the image and it's basically filling the whole card, which was not expected. I was expecting the image to not cover that instead, but yeah, we can fix that. So basically you can see now, the implementation is how it is. You basically got the images are not properly filled in, so we need to fill that in the image over here in the listing section, home listing card over here. But other than that, I think everything is good. So for the async image that we have, you see we have the same size as it is, but we can go for maybe 230 dp in height, and also you can say scale, content scale, and that can be content scale dot crop. Okay, now let's try once again. This time I'm hopeful this card will be looking much better. Now you can see it's looking really nice and it's cropped from the margins are there from the sides. We can even reduce that if you want. We can also say, like, if you want the width to be 230, and you can say something as width is equals to 230 and height is equals to like maybe 300, so that the height is slightly higher and also the width is this way. And now it looks like that. So we have the cards ready. We have this beautiful section that we've created through Canvas in this video. And I think that's pretty much, we did a lot of stuff in this video. First we did was basically we created the basic UI screen, then we worked on how to use Canvas in this to basically implement that. Then we created this listing. So this is how it looks now. It looks pretty good. Now let's just test it on iOS as well and see if it's working as expected on iOS as well. So okay, so now it just executed on iOS, and here's how it looks on iOS. So basically you can see definitely need to load those images. So the loading is there, images are being loaded, but other than that, everything is pretty much pretty nice on how we wanted to implement. So in the next video we will be implementing the bottom navigation and will integrate the navigation 3, which is again newly released or stable navigation component for Compose. which is really exciting. And from there, we'll see how the project goes. So thank you so much for watching the video. And once again, if you haven't subscribed to the channel till now, please do subscribe, like the video, comment down below. I'll see you in the next video. So till then, happy coding. Bye bye.
Thank you so much for watching the video. If you found this tutorial helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the bell icon so you don't forget any update. If you got any question, you can join my Discord server. The link is in the description. Also, for quick updates and tips, you can follow me on Instagram. Until next time, keep learning, keep developing. Bye.